Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is another episode of Ask the Diva, where I am answering comments and questions regarding the content that we've been posting on this channel. So today's question comes from Capri Hood 29. Very, very good question. What can we do besides protest? Now, this question was in response to Congress impeachment and the constitutional crisis and talking about the line of succession and what would happen if the president and possibly the vice president were both to be impeached. So I talked a bit about the line of succession. While it was incredibly depressing for a lot of folks, and I understand why, and a lot of folks feel hopeless right now, let me respond to this question in the hopes that y'all will take away some things that you can do and feel a bit more empowered in this really dark and troubling time. So my response has 4 prongs. There are 4 things that all of us can do in these times to help fight back. First off is protest. Second is volunteer. Third is donate. And 4th is to educate. So first off, protest. Very easy. We all remember the No Kings protests that occurred all around the country. That is not going to be the end of it. There are more than enough horrible things happening every other day in this administration. And I would encourage everyone, if you so feel moved, to join a protest. Now, I'm not going to protest shame you if you decide not to go. There are a million reasons why. I mean, you may have pre-existing medical conditions that might prohibit you from walking long distances or being in the heat, or maybe crowds freak you out. Totally understand that, especially now. But if you do choose to protest, it's a great way to raise your voice, number 1, literally and figuratively. Number 2, you're going to be in the company of other people that share the same worldview as you, which again helps with that feeling of isolation and like, oh my God, am I alone in this? And number 3, it makes you feel like you're actually doing something to contribute towards the movement. Now, I will always caution, as a Queen of First Amendment, I will always caution, number 1, be very mindful of the laws in your state. If you're like me living in Florida, you have a governor that's talking all kinds of foolishness that people can run over protesters. While you actually can't do that, that'd be called murder. Be mindful of sort of the legal and the rhetoric that's being broadcast from the leaders in your community and in your state, because that may inform what people with bad mind and bad intentions may end up doing. So there's that. Number 2, just because you go to a protest does not mean you need to engage in civil disobedience. Now, civil disobedience is doing something that you know is going to get you arrested. That could include sitting in. That could include blocking a public roadway. That could include, maybe standing in an area that has already been cordoned off as, no, you can't go over there. So the police are like, no, you can't enter this area. You do it anyway, right? There's a strategic reason why you may want to do that. In the first civil rights movement, we know that so many leaders got arrested, again, knowingly, because this was part of the movement. This was a part of a particular action. If you choose to do that, number 1, look deep before you leap. Understand what you have at stake. If, let's say, you are a nurse, or you have a teacher, you have a particular license. If you get arrested for an act of civil disobedience, is that going to impact your license? Is that going to impact your livelihood? Think about that in advance. Number 2, are you doing this as part of a coordinated action? And if so, do you have legal counsel to be able to represent you? Something to consider. Are you going to incur that cost on your own? Do you think it would just be a misdemeanor that you can pay a fine and keep it moving? All of those things you would want to think through before engaging in an act of civil disobedience. But protesting in and of itself is not an act of civil disobedience, because we are all allowed under the First Amendment the ability to gather, the ability to talk, the ability to protest. You just have to do it in a certain format. So for instance, you can protest on a public street. Question is, can you block the actual roadway like we saw on the freeways in California? That's kind of a gray area. That's moving more towards civil disobedience. But if you're standing on the sidewalk, you're allowed to stand on the sidewalk and hold a placard and protest. That's okay. So just again, kind of understand before you go into the protest what your parameters are and understand what the rules of engagement are. And then you can move from there and make your own decision. But completely encourage people to protest because, again, that show of force, those amazing photos that we saw from across the country, that sends a very clear message of what will and will not be tolerated in this country. So that's option A. Now, prong B is to volunteer. You may not want to go on the street. Trust me, there's a role on this bus for everyone, okay? So you can volunteer to causes that are close to your heart. If you, for instance, are very concerned about voting rights, you can join an organization and volunteer with an organization like Common Cause or League of Women Voters, something like that. If you are more concerned about immigrants' rights, you can work with local grassroots organizations and, again, volunteer your time with them to help immigrants who are trying to navigate the system. Or again, I'm not endorsing one or the other, but some communities have formed community patrols to inform their neighbors as to whether or not there's ICE activity happening in their community. That's another form of volunteering, right? So there's a number of different causes that you can get involved with. Just hit your favorite search engine and Google or whatever volunteer opportunities on X issue near me. And you will get a whole list of different organizations that could desperately need the help. Because remember, with all of these federal funds being cut, a lot of organizations are now struggling to keep their doors open and struggling to keep staff. So if you have an organization that's understaffed, they're going to really lean heavily on volunteers to be able to get the work done. So that's a great way for you to be able to lend your hand to the effort. The third prong is donate. Now, all of these organizations, again, with the federal cuts and all of that, they need money. And doing this work isn't free. So for instance, the ACLU, they do an amazing job at fighting back against all of these issues in the court of law. But again, filing lawsuits aren't free, right? Attorneys they kind of work for free, but at the same token, most of us need a salary, right? Because, you can't take your good works to the grocery store to be able to get some food, right? And we all know the price of eggs is insane. So donating to these causes is an effective way to help. And it doesn't have to be a $5,000 donation. If you can, great. But a $10 donation, a $5, a $25 donation. Listen, if you have 1,000 people give a $25 donation, that may be enough to cover some filing fees for a lawsuit, right? So you don't think of it like, oh, my $5 isn't going to do a lot. Your $5 plus everybody else's contributions help push things forward. So donating is another option. And last, but certainly not least, education. So first off, educate yourself. Educate yourself on the issues that are going on. And you don't have to, because again, this can feel very much like drinking from a fire hose, right? Because there's a lot going on every single day, every single minute. You feel like you get another alert on your phone with more foolishness. So pick one or two issues that are really close to your heart. It may be reproductive rights. It may be LGBTQ plus rights. It could have to do with gun rights. It could do whatever, First Amendment, pick an issue that's close to your heart and educate yourself on it. Become a subject matter expert in that particular issue. Read all that's available about it. Make sure that you're not just going off emotions and all of that, but you have facts to back up the arguments that you're making to back up your position. And then once you have a firm grasp of the material based on what's publicly available, then share that information with friends, family, colleagues, so that they too are getting that education. You can hop on your social media and talk about some of these issues to share the knowledge. Because again, I always say, I quote the Washington Post that's a whole other issue. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But I do agree with them when they say democracy dies in darkness. And that darkness is not only just about transparency, but it's also a lack of knowledge. And when people don't know certain aspects, they may think, oh, well, that's normal. They may not understand that something's unconstitutional for a reason, that this is bad for a reason, that we had precedent as to why we don't go down this path for a reason. And so you can be that subject matter expert in your family, in your circle on that particular issue. And by educating folks, they may make different decisions at the voting box. Food for thought. Weigh in on the comments on what you think about that. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this was Ask the Diva. Make sure to subscribe to Legal AF for all the updates coming out of this administration. Take care.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.